I don't know the law very well. And I feel like the time when you learn the law is when you break it. And so it's like, what are you allowed and not allowed to do in the public? And the consequences of that, is it just like maybe you're sleeping in your car and that's a ticketable offense or something? Like, are those the kinds of things you just find out and then you have to go maybe do some jail time? And
yeah. And where, honestly, fuck you, officer, because where are you going to send the ticket? Actually, there's no areas left for you to go. I think we have to start finding solutions, because it's, as a society, if we don't work together and we leave our vulnerable and our most marginalized behind, then are we really a society? I don't know. As much as it sucks to say, like, oh yeah, just push your feelings aside, don't feel anything. It's
be brave while you're experiencing all this stuff. Also, be brave, queen.
Right. But I think at the same time, like, people have a right to be brave, and as a society, it is our responsibility to respond to that with compassion and kindness.
One of the words that keeps coming up for me is unnecessary, like unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
That's what homelessness to do more. I really felt like I have more to offer, and like that I had more to say than that. And so I started creating opportunities for myself to do that, like Fringe being a big one. The number of like people who bought me food or given me a ride or like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like, I mean, I can't even remember every one of them, but I remember the feeling of hope. Like I felt like that, like, why am I any better than these people? Which I think everyone's better than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this societal glitch where people are tricked into thinking that's acceptable in some way.
Yeah.
And it's really not. I think if I didn't have comedy when I was homeless, I would have been completely lost. Like, it was important. Like, it's very important to have that kind of release and relief, and also just a outlet.
Hi, cuties and charmers. Welcome to the pod. We're experts now. My name is Rebecca.
I'm Jackie, your other host for this week at least. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, we're always exploring our options.
Yeah, you never know who we're going to bring on. How you been lately?
Pretty good. What's there to say? I quit. I'm not going to say that part. I'm just going to roll right over that.
Well, we do have some fun news, which will be featured in a future episode, which is we're going to Mexico.
Yeah, that's right. Vacation mode.
I am ready. I am so ready for Cancun, for cenotes, for you to drink a lot of margaritas.
And, whatever they'll give me, I'll drink.
Yeah.
Except for the water. Anything but water. That's my pledge this trip.
I love that. I will drink all the water since I cannot drink alcohol. And then together, we will really take advantage of that all-inclusive resort.
Are you okay? What's happening to you?
My voice.
Yes.
I know. I'm not okay. I think I have a cold, which is...
Jackie, are you kidding me? This is not the news the pod needed today. I got my COVID booster. I got my Hep A shot, and you're over here catching colds. And
I really don't know what else to say about it, other than there is someone to blame, but I will not name names today.
Mm-hmm. Not yet. Okay.
Not today.
We'll keep your secrets. Well, what have you got for me in the amateur arena?
Oh, in the arena. Well, I as we've been getting further and further into this show, I have noticed quite a few things. One of those things is that I have made a lot of jokes about how my mom is going to be the only listener, and the amateur alert this week is that I don't think my mom actually listens to the show. And so
the only person not listening to the pod, okay?
Absolutely. I think it's my mom just doesn't know how to use podcasts, which is her personal amateur alert. if she knew how, she would listen. But really, it's that I make a lot of jokes about how my mom cares so much about me, and in fact, she does not, apparently. In fact, she does not.
She's listened to the Jackie podcast for the past 21 years of your
That's a lot.
of your life.
You're right. No one deserves that. So that's all I had in the amateur alert arena this week, because it's just a little quickie for our fans, but it is still, I'm like, that's embarrassing. You know,
even your mom, your biggest fan, does not listen to the pod. We did make a reference in a couple podcasts ago that we'd raffle off your ill-bought fireplace to the only listener we had, which is your mom. But now that we know she's not a listener, that fireplace is back on the table, listeners.
Yeah, let us know. Instagram us, get on our DMs. You know, honestly, we'll just take the first person to reference the fireplace in the DMs gets said fireplace. So
yeah, that's it.
You heard it here. All right. What are we talking about this week?
Well, this week, you know that you and I love to make light of things, go, get goofy. But we do have a subject that, it's going to have some more serious tones to it. We're talking about homelessness today, and certainly living in California, one of us in Northern California, one of us in Southern California, and probably everyone in every state gets some, exposure to the unhoused in their community. It's certainly one of our biggest issues here in Southern California. And so we're going to be speaking to someone who has experienced this for themselves, and to what extent that they have experienced it.
I mean, this is a great topic, and not in the sense that, this is what everyone should do. But I think it's something that is really at the heart of what this country is experiencing right now. Jesse, who was on a previous episode, and Lance, we all worked at the LGBT Center, which worked vigorously to fight homelessness. So that was actually something that we worked a lot with, and the people's experiences. And I remember working in that job, learning so many things that I did not know about what it's like for people experiencing homelessness, and the dangers and the statistics. Like, I remember one of the shocking ones, it's like 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 homeless teens is LGBT, which is not the same ratio to how many LGBT teens there are. So I think this is a really great topic, in the sense that we should be having these conversations. We should be talking about these things, and we should understand what people's experiences are, because it's really easy to turn a blind eye and say it's not my problem.
Yeah, and as we always do with this podcast, we take it with a grain of salt who our experts are, and we leave the expertise to their lived experience. So of course, this is by no means, we'll say it now, and I'm sure, make some effort to reiterate the same thing, that we're not speaking on behalf of all people going through this, but just that this is an experience that a friend of mine did have. And this person is also a comedian, so thankfully they'll also, I'm sure, have a little bit of levity to it, because sometimes you do need a little bit of sugar to help the medicine go down and get you through those experiences, and kind of turn it into something you can take some kind of meaning out of, and find a way to communicate the experience to other people. Because if you don't have any experience of it, it can just be really a kind of daunting subject that it's hard to look at it,
It's hard. And I think, speaking of the humor that you and I take with everything, we have a gallows humor, right? That's, I think, what you and I tend to go to, because we've had a lot of traumatic experiences. And what else are you supposed to do? Like, we could sit here and cry and feel bad for ourselves, or we could try to find levity and joy out of our experiences, which often tends to making light of them. But you're right. And I think there's so much shame that surrounds this. I mean, my mom and I were technically unhoused when there was a point when I was in high school where we did not have a place to live. And it was, luckily for us, a very, very couple weeks kind of scenario, whereas a lot of people, this is a long-term issue, or something that they go in and out of fighting off for many, many years. We look at compensation, we look at the 1%, we have a lot of conversations about inequity, but when we're looking at even the standard of living versus what it's like for our lowest people living, as a big discrepancy there, right? Like the standard of living does not equal what people who are unhoused are experiencing. So, I mean, yeah, I think I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think maybe the first way we jump into this is maybe we chat through a couple of ways that I think it happens for folks, right? I think there is a lot of different experiences that lead to someone being unhoused. I remember working in domestic violence, working at a safe house. That was something that led a lot of people to being unhoused. They, didn't have a place to go, leaving their abuser. Same thing with teenage youth, right? Leaving abusive parents or abusive homes and trying to find a safer space. And unfortunately, there isn't a space for them. I think a lot of people, you touched on this in maybe a previous episode or just a conversation about how many people are one paycheck away from, being unhoused. That's the reality for some people living in of I don't know if I will be able to make it if I lost my job today. That happened to how many people during the pandemic?
Yeah. And I think, as we can imagine, I'm sure that there are so many people who are already living that small degree away from an unhoused situation, whether they're already paycheck to paycheck or they have, gig or contract work, or it's just the margins are so small for error that, when that kind of last straw breaks and they find themselves in that situation, that's where I wonder then, how do you know what to do? I think there's probably human kind of first gut reaction of like, asking for help, someone, a friend, a family. But I can also imagine that like once you've come to that situation, you might have felt like you've already used up all those resources, or everyone else around you is in very similar dire straits. And so I hope that, in looking at this, we can kind of sober ourselves to the reality of it and also kind of take away some awareness of just where we're at today in society in terms of, what can your options be? Where can you go? How can you find an organization that can help you? And maybe we'll have some local links we can share to organizations like that, or just find out things that maybe we could do now if we're not in that position to strengthen organizations in our area, like the one that you mentioned, that of course Sacramento has the what was the name of the I'm like,
Oh, that was the
center,
LGBT. Yeah,
yeah.
the
Like
LGBT
you said it a
community
million
center.
times.
And I think
Yeah.
like you hit on something that I think is really important to talk about, which is the difference between homelessness and people's perception of that being unhoused and having unstable housing,
Yeah,
right? So
housing insecurity is not the same as
yeah, and so there
sleeping on
is
the
like
street.
you are technically unhoused if you're couch surfing and you don't have a regular place to live. That still creates a lot of problems in people's lives because you need a permanent address to apply for a job, for social security things to be sent to you, for, mental health, for doctors. All of that, you need stable living to receive regular care. Depending on what county you live in can change things. So if you're unhoused, you technically don't live in a county. It creates a lot of different issues. So there's the people who are before living on the streets, who are unhoused, who are still needing services, and they are the one step away from living on the streets. They're the people like, something happened to one or you or I. You and I would call each other up. We'd be sleeping on each other's couches for however long, right? It's not even a question. And that would be the unhoused step. But then there's the step that I think most people think about is, you're living on the streets, you've run out of options, you are, destitute for help in a lot of ways. And those people are at the mercy of organizations who do a lot of hard work and put so much into the community to create safe spaces so people can pull themselves out of it. I think one of the things that I remember being told was, the amount of people, especially for women, who are sexually assaulted within the first 48 hours of living on the streets. And so I'm going to be real. Everyone talks about, oh, that person should go get a job or they should figure their life out or whatever. But if I became unhoused and I was sexually assaulted, drugs are going to look pretty nice to like deal with that pain and to deal with my reality, right? And I think it's so easy to sit here from privilege and be like, oh, I would never make that decision, right? But like you get down a path and things keep happening and things keep going wrong and you can't get yourself off the path, and you get to a point where you have so much trauma sitting on you, like it's nearly impossible to start dealing with that in a productive way that doesn't include some sort of negative coping habits. So
what harsh reality is. Yeah, and just what you said earlier made me think about like, how do you even know how to go about getting some kind of benefits? You know, do you need to establish an address at a shelter, or are there like steps you have to take to like see if you can scrape together a night at a hotel for an address, or a PO box? I'm like, this must be a lot of bureaucratic red tape that must be so frustrating. And then just, you know, what it's like, or how many barriers sometimes we have in the modern world from our own like primal human existence. I know when my car died, I had 5% phone battery, and I quickly realized how much of my life I am utilizing just modern technology, that if it was taken away from me, I'm already like, what would I do somewhere in the middle of Los Angeles, miles from my home, with just my sense of direction and my 2 feet? Like it was raining and I was like, I'm hours from home if I have to walk. And without like a map from my phone and without a car to drive me anywhere, it was quickly like, I mean, I used that 5%. I just barely got, a tow truck to jump my car in time, but sometimes it's just that quick to realize what human life is actually like without a lot of our comforts and resources.
well, I think something like really important to talk about here is that notice that I have not mentioned government agencies a single time. And that the help that typically people get in these situations are 100% from organizations. And even like, I'm not a religious person, but churches do a lot for the homeless population. They try to help. They probably do more than most other groups. And it's nonprofits, it's community organizations, it's people who see the like homeless and have a heart, and give them their leftover food or try to provide services in any way that they can. It's the government is not doing enough to keep up with what the services like that the public needs. Without going on a huge tirade of what I think is the biggest problem in this country, but it's mental health. And I think what we're seeing with the homeless population is that a lot of it is due to mental health. A lot of them are not able to hold down a regular job because they have mental abilities that are not in line with a stereotypical society of how you should, function. And so these folks, who a lot of them are good people, not dangerous people, end up on the streets because they can't maintain a job that will then pay their rent regularly. And maybe they do have great things to contribute to society, but until we give them some help, how can we expect them to do that, right? Like, it's just stand on your own 2 feet and figure it out yourself. And if you can't, then something's wrong with you. Just seems like the kind of mindset we've had with mental health and people experiencing homelessness the last few decades. And
Yeah. And our family model is in this country it's changed, and compared to other places in the world it's very different, that we do tend to splinter, be nuclear family models. People are moving far away from their home bases, so then if you do have those mental crises come up, you don't have a family structure in place, you don't have anyone to be dependent on. And that, I think that can just be a huge systemic issue, just in, is there even a solution to that? We're not going back that direction, in this version of the fabric of our country. And then, yeah, I wonder like how you kind of like learn how to be in the I feel like there are rules. I'm laughing at myself because I'm like, I feel so dumb talking about it, but I know there's in like what do they call it, there's like a word, I think it's rubber tramping or something, people who maybe either just want to leave kind of organized society behind, who either choose that lifestyle, or just people who have lived in that lifestyle for a long time. There's like language and coding, like you can sometimes see little graffiti marks that are in this language that is understood by certain transient people, of like, oh, there's like liberal people, or not liberal, but there's like, oh, there's places this way where it's like safe to gather, or like, oh, don't go this way because the cops are here, or oh, there's like there's like a whole like language around that. And then just like the like bare necessities of knowing, I don't know the law very well. And I feel like the time when you learn the law is when you break it. And so it's like, what are you allowed and not allowed to do in the public? And the consequences of that, is it just like you know, maybe you're sleeping in your car and that's a ticketable offense or something? Like, are those the kinds of things you just find out and then you have to go maybe do some jail time? And
yeah. And where, honestly, fuck you, officer, because where are you going to send the ticket? Okay, if I'm living in my car, like, and I think these are the ridiculous things that our society needs to rethink. Because if we are ticketing somebody because they are parked overnight because they are living in their car, yeah, adding money that they need to pay is going to solve the problem. You're totally right. And I am not going to sit here and say like, fuck the government and fuck the police, they're all bad people. I do think that they are people that are enforcing rules that are set forth for them to enforce, and they are doing the job that they are supposed to. I'm not saying all police are great. I'm not saying all police are awful. I'm just saying I think that's the nature of what they're doing. Now, as a government and as a society, we need to make points to help people, right? And so, I don't know. I think you start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, how do I, keep warm, right? So I think a lot of that is, you see, like sleeping bags,
move to Southern
blankets.
California. That's why that's part of why there is such a big population
Right.
here, is you die in the winter in other places.
And same thing in San Francisco. Even though it's much colder here, you can survive here. You cannot survive in Utah middle winter, right? So there's food and water, right? Access to water. You see a lot of homeless camps near like a waterway or like places like that they can wash their clothes. They can maybe get water, whether it's clean or not. They can use it in that sense. Sleep is a really dangerous thing. Sleeping at night is really, really dangerous. That's why you see most folks sleeping during the day. That's when they get robbed. That's when there are predators out. That's when sexual assaults happen. And then I think finding a group of people that are like-minded to you and are willing to look out for you, those are kind of where you start, right? And I think that goes to like, what is it, Maslow's second level of like security. So that's like you have food, water.
Wow, mind blown. Did not know there was anything past the
physiological
basics.
things. No, there's that's where it goes next. And then it's like you build up from there, like, right? I don't think that you get to the higher levels of Maslow's triangle, right? Like, I think you're probably really focusing on security and heat, or cold. If it's 120, right? Like living in Phoenix, being homeless in Phoenix is going to be a hot mess right there, right? Like, I would rather be in Utah.
Yeah, and then are you migrating? Are you traveling? And then you're expending energy. So yeah, it goes back to then where are you getting food? And it's a.
And there's a lot of like cities where I don't know if it's like a technical term that people use, but a lot of conversations had about illegal to be homeless, right? Like San Francisco, I'm pretty sure LA is too, are sanctuary cities. So like you won't get a ticket for parking overnight if you're experiencing homelessness, right? Like you won't get a ticket for sleeping on the street and like, what is it, loitering or whatever they want to call it. It is not illegal to be homeless, but there are a lot of cities in the US where it is illegal to be homeless, where, how dare you be camping on the street? Like that's illegal, right? And do you think that's a choice? Like I maybe some people it is, but for most people, I think they would rather be in a warm bed.
I did just see a sign last night when I was looking for parking near a restaurant where I was going to meet a friend, and I didn't see a parking sign, which in LA makes you instantly very suspicious because you're like, there has to be a parking sign. There's no way that I'm just getting free, unlimited parking here. And so I'm searching, like I went up half a block and I doubled back, went half a block the other way. I didn't see any parking signs, but because I was looking so intently, I saw this sign that had a lot of text on it, and looking closer, it was about an ordinance that mandated no loiterings. It's like, as of this date, this has been passed, a temporary this or that. So, even though it might be a sanctuary city, there's places where there's still an understandable need to enforce, certain, not an understandable need, but that there's, from the city's perspective, some need to crowd control, for lack of a better term.
I mean, yeah, you can't have, you have to find a way for everyone to live together in society, right? So if there is an area, and there is a lot of drugs, violence, sex, and homeless camps, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that those things do not exist, right? It does happen. So do I want that next to an elementary school? Probably not, right? Like, I also probably wouldn't want my house to be next to an elementary school because Jackie's loud and
Because
crazy,
there's
and like,
also the sex and drug parties there.
so many every day. But I think I can understand the way that society says, hey, like, maybe not in this area because this is where we're trying to conduct a certain thing. But at the same time, you can't say, well, not in this area and not in this area and not in that. Actually, there's no areas left for you to go. I think we have to start finding solutions because it's, as a society, if we don't work together and we leave our vulnerable and our most marginalized behind, then are we really a society? I don't know.
So then I guess that just leaves us with, is there a path out? Maybe if you have some more things working for you, like you can get some stability in your mental health, like you can save up some money. What, I guess, steps can you take to get that security and then get, one more leg up on the tier of hierarchy of needs?
I think it really comes down to a couple things, right? Get connected with a social worker, get connected with somebody who's able to help you navigate the systems so that you can get connected to the right services. I think that is one of the most potent things. Not all people that is an option, right? You might live in a county where they don't offer those services. You might live in an area that there are so many people on the list for those services, it's too far down, right? I think then you start, what's plan B? Okay, well, what services can I connect myself to, right? Is there somebody there that I can ask questions to and get advice on where I can go from here? Am I part of a subgroup of society, right? Like, so domestic violence victims, like, if you're experiencing homelessness, you can go to a domestic violence shelter and they will help you, get back on your feet. Are you LGBT? There's groups that will help those folks, right? Like, find a system in your city or your area that is willing to support you and help you navigate those systems. And I think the most important thing is, and it sucks to say this, but like, don't have shame. Like, be honest. What are you really experiencing? Don't minimize your pain because you're embarrassed, right? If you need services, and you should not be ashamed of that. That's why we have organizations out there to help you, right? So as much as it sucks to say, like, oh yeah, just push your feelings aside, don't feel anything. It's
Be
super
brave while you're experiencing all this stuff. Also, be brave, queen.
Right. But I think at the same time, like, people have a right to be brave. And as a society, it is our responsibility to respond to that with compassion and kindness, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll hear about some of the hard truths of society.
Well, I think
how it treats our, people living without.
After our little diatribe of depression here, I feel like we could only go up in this episode. But
yes,
this is like the IVF topic, right? Like, it's a little bit out of what we normally go with, of like, haha, lighthearted, let's joke our way through all of this. Like, these are important topics that we want to have, like conversations we want to have. And like, thanks for picking this, Bex, because I think this is super important that we have these conversations, and that, we hope that other people are inspired by it too, and are like, hey, like, I do think about this differently. Let me try to help somebody else's experience a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's there's a lot more that we can do, but we can always at least get some more awareness on something. So I'm excited to hear from our expert this week. I'm sure they're going to have a lot to tell us, and I'm not even going to pretend that I'm an expert. I'm going to be a student of this one.
I'm excited to learn more and the experience, and I, always love to hear what's going on with people and how they figured it out, how they became them.
Yeah, and turned it into something really, and that's the thing too, is like it's enough just to experience it, but to also turn it into something that can make you and other people laugh and bring actual joy and positivity into the world. That's some really cool energy. So I'm excited for us to come back and get a little bit street smart.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break. I hope you got to catch up on all your to-do lists in that very short amount of time. We're back here to talk about our topic again. Bex, who do we have?
Wow, I wish I had a 35-second long task list that I could just knock out in one riff of a guitar solo, which is about how long our break is. I'm doing pretty great here. I'm excited about our guest today. We got my friend and fellow comedian, very funny person you may have seen performing at clubs and colleges and backyards and front yards and fringe festivals. Tony Bartalone, welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going? How
Awesome.
are you guys?
Oh, very excited. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I grew up in LA County, and so homelessness is something that I was exposed to very young because of that. Um, and then when I was 22, I ran away from home, and 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 then I was just kind of in a bunch of unstable living situations until I was like legit sleeping on the streets, homeless. Um, yeah, I've ridden the bus like most of my adult life. That's also a lot of exposure to the culture,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people get stabbed. I've seen people smoke crack. I've seen a lot of craziness happen.
I think we touch on that quite a bit. So just a little background. I used to work at a LGBT center in Sacramento, and we did a lot of homeless services there. And we talk about it in the first part of the episode about how the likelihood of when you kind of start living on the street or having housing instability, how you're statistically drastically go up to be exposed to yourself personally or around violence, drug addiction, all of those things, and how that really impacts once you start there and you kind of get exposed to it, it's so much easier to go down different paths.
Yeah, no, and I honestly I do feel very lucky that I have not I never got involved in a lot of those things. I've never smoked crack, although, I definitely had been offered the chance.
I have too, though. So you know what? We're both we're both there.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't. It's funny because it doesn't seem like a good idea. Like if you're living in a house and you have Netflix or whatever, it doesn't seem like a good idea to go smoke crack. But if you're on the street and there's nothing, my fucking. Then it doesn't seem like such a bad idea all of a sudden.
Yeah, burn through some hours of the day.
Yeah, just be high out of your mind on crack.
Well, and not feel what's going on around you, right? It might be cold, it might be hot, it might be uncomfortable. There's so many other different things associated with not having the comforts of sitting in a home with we forget what comes with a home nowadays of all the niceties, water, regularly showering, all that stuff. Yeah, crack starts to
usually
look pretty
temperature control.
Yeah.
Of some kind, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most brutal things was people are like, it's LA, it doesn't get cold, but it does get cold.
Sure.
It gets very cold.
And you get used to Yeah, it's definitely at night. And then also if you live here, you're like, yeah, I'm used to warmer climate by this point.
Well, yeah. But also, like, I think I read this. I don't know if it's factual, but is LA has the most homeless people die of hypothermia in LA in
Oh,
America.
That's because hypothermia is more actually associated with heat than it is cold, which I totally was mind blown by, but it has something to do with when it's so hot, your body can't cool down. You don't have enough water, your body can't cool itself down. And it also sends you into like a hypothermic state, which
weird.
I never knew. So you're actually probably right on there.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I
But
like
yeah,
theory.
yeah.
So what do you think like kept you from, I don't know, going down some of those more irreversible paths? Just luck, or like thinking like, oh, this is temporary and I just need to keep my, head above water?
I never thought this was temporary. I always was scared and just didn't know what was going to happen. Um, that's probably a big thing too, is like the day-to-day fear of like being completely untethered and I don't know, unhoused, just against the elements. You're just in survival mode, like pretty much 24/7. Things like, yeah, I'm bipolar, and like things like keeping a sleep schedule and eating the right foods and like exercising, all that stuff like that you do to stay healthy, mentally especially, is pretty much goes out the window when it's just like, like maybe you don't have money to eat one day and you're trying to figure it out. And like I definitely I definitely do feel lucky in that I've seen a lot of people way worse off and without the mental stability to help themselves, like without the resources to like, I mean, like my mind was blown when I would go in and like keeping up with the paperwork of like stuff like food stamps and
Yeah, that was a big question
you
we
know
had of like how you even know about what programs are available and how to apply. And what if you don't have an address? Do you get a PO box?
right, yeah. I went through a lot of that. I didn't have an address. Yeah, I didn't have an address for like 8 years. I didn't have a bank account for like 6 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, I would still get mail at my mom's house a lot of the time, and but even that was kind of a. She lives near Orange County. This is a house I grew up in, and like just someone getting the mail and setting it off to the side and not telling me that I had an important
Yeah.
something, things like that. Or I mean, my car. I ended up junking my car, but I had like a fix-it ticket for expired registration, and I still have not paid that.
Oh gosh. And
It was like 900.
and it's it's like one of those ironies of like, how are you going to enforce more penalties and fines on people that are already, living in this thin margin of
Which, and
resources?
a lot of times there's something like that, like some financial something like and it doesn't have to be huge. Like my friend, me and my friend talk about it. He grew up pretty poor, and he's doing all right for himself, I think. But we talk about how like $60, which seems to be like, I don't know why, that's like a recurring price in my life, where it's like, if you don't have $60 right now, your life's gonna spiral into chaos. Like, yeah, and yeah, it could be that like $50 sometimes is like the difference between you living in a house or on the street. Like it just, I mean, and like say you get a ticket and you don't have whatever, $70 to pay
Yeah.
it, and then now it's $300.
Yep.
Now they're taking away your license.
Now you have a
Now you don't have a
warrant.
way to get to work.
Yeah.
But then you go to work anyways or you start taking the bus to work, but then your car is just sitting. And then like what happened to me is they just put pressure on me to get rid of my car because it was taking up a parking space.
Oh man.
And then they ended up kicking me out anyways. And so I was like, I almost was like, you should have kicked me out. Well, I still had my car because I could have slept there.
I think that's like my question of, and you don't have to share any details you don't want to, but like what that beginning for like phases was like, you know, first experiencing being out there and like kind of what goes through your head, and maybe any like tips or tricks for anybody who could end up in that position, or that could help them avoid it, right?
I mean, there are resources available. I remember when I first got food stamps, it was amazing because I was like every day. I was like, eating hot dogs and not like just cheap, gross stuff. But it's like, yeah, you get a pack of hot dogs for like $1, and you could eat like one or two a day and be okay. And like, yeah, stuff like that. That like when I got food stamps, all of a sudden I was eating spinach and more healthy foods like fruit and vegetables and stuff, and it made a big impact on my mental health as well. Being able to afford healthier food, um, and like yeah, so yeah, try to take advantage of resources. It's like it's really hard. Like I'm trying right now. I'm dealing with I'm on prescription. I'm on like Lexapro, and it's running out. And I've been trying to get a hold of the doctor, and they're just like, and then CVS like texts me, "Hey, we can't get a hold of your doctor," and it's like,
What?
well, what chance do I have? You're fucking CVS, like you have commercials on television. You can't get a hold of my doctor. Like I'm just a guy.
Well, it's true, and I think that's one of the things. So I have a family member, my one of my brother's boyfriends has severe mental illness, and many times he's had issues with, I think he takes it through a shot now, with getting his shot, right? And he'll
Mhm.
be doing really well, really stable prior to going off the medication, right? And then because the doctors aren't responding, and these are typically what Medi-Cal doctors, right? So they're
Mhm,
got
yeah,
a really long list of people. That then means he's not getting his medication, which severely affects his mental wellness, right? And at that point, he can't take care of himself. And then he's spending money he doesn't have, or making other choices that he wouldn't have made had someone picked up the
yeah,
phone and responded.
yeah. I was really hesitant to get on medication because I mean, one, I've been through it before when I was younger. But yeah, when I was a kid, it was ADD, and they gave me Adderall when I was 14, and that was not good. And like it really kind of, like I still research that to this day, and like like the side effects of certain psych meds and stuff like that. It's crazy. And I mean, my dad died when I was young, and he was on a lot of medications that could have, um, you know, he had a heart attack, and there were two medications he was taking.
Mhm.
And at his autopsy, a doctor said like two of those medications should not be prescribed at the same time because they could trigger a heart attack. And so, like, yeah, like there is, and part of it is I mean, it's the healthcare
Yeah.
system that I wasn't getting the hesitancy to get on medication. Isn't that like I didn't think it would help. I was like willing to try. I'm willing to try anything that'll help. I just knew where I'm at now, where I can't get a hold of a doctor and my medication's running out. I'm literally taking a half dose. I like cut it down to a half dose just because I figured it was better to like take less of it for a longer time or whatever. And then,
That is so
yeah,
fucked up.
I'm kind of weaning myself off. Yeah, but it shouldn't. I called today and they were like, or yesterday, and they were like, oh yeah, the psychiatrist isn't here,
Wow.
and his assistant who makes appointments is also not here. I'll make a note and they'll call you tomorrow, which is today, and they haven't called me, so it was like, and I went in person. I've like called like I keep calling them and I keep going in, and
That's just awful.
it's just
That's cruel and unusual
it's
punishment in some countries,
Yeah.
right? Like
right.
depriving someone, like if you were in prison and they were depriving you of your medication, that would be cruel and unusual punishment. And you are just a citizen of this country. And the
Yeah.
fact that there are prisoners being treated better than you right now is really questionable. Like,
Right, yeah, because again, like, yeah, I'm not a criminal.
right?
I'm not,
And yet they can get their
I don't
medication.
even smoke
Yeah,
crack.
they can get their medication and you can't, right? Like there's a really
Yeah.
questionable thing.
And then you start to wonder, like, there's like a very obvious link of people self-medicating
Yeah.
when they can't get medication.
Yeah.
Or they can't get stable medication or affordable medication, or like I said, like keeping up with the paperwork. And I'll tell you this, when I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been on EBT lately. I haven't been going to this. I'm on Medi-Cal though. But keeping up with all the paperwork because when I was first homeless, it was when Obama was president.
Thanks,
And
Obama.
Don't start with
yeah. But then when Trump became president, it became a lot harder. All those
Interesting.
resources.
Yeah.
There it is.
And it almost seemed like I had to like fill out paperwork every couple months to like keep. They just kept making it harder and harder to get
Because-
food
yeah,
stamps. And I
And
remember,
it didn't seem
Prove
like
that
it
you
was.
need
yeah.
it. That's the theory behind it is that if you really need it, then you'll do the paperwork. But really, and I'm sorry, I'm going to make a really big political statement here. Fuck you. Because if you need that assistance, then you don't have time to be doing the paperwork. You need to be focusing on the other parts of your life for betterment.
Like I said, there's a lot more people who are in a worse place than me. I mean, there's people who lost loved ones and they're struggling to keep their life together, and they're like, yeah, they're already buried in paperwork. Just like doing taxes is enough for them to like, be overwhelmed. And especially like when you're going through a psychological breakdown, which is often the case with someone who's, well, I mean, with me, I definitely had like a full mental breakdown and just did not, I was in it. I wasn't like outside of myself analyzing, oh, this seems like maybe you should,
Yeah.
I don't know, XYZ. But no, I was just like I was overwhelmed with all the, and it was grief. I thinking about it now in retrospect, I was grieving. I think I was grieving my dad as an adult with like, he died when I was 7. So as I became like, my first major breakup was like a huge thing where it was almost like I had this new emotional maturity.
Processing
then-
loss.
So but then like there was all this stuff from my dad dying that like I had to like catch up or something. Like it was almost like starting over.
Well, it brings
the
it up,
grieving
yeah.
process.
Like, and I think a lot of people don't like. My
Yeah.
father passed when I was right before my 13th birthday, and even the last 2 years, I had to figuratively pull it out of the closet, re-examine it, and see how it's affecting my life. Right, like at the age of 7,
Mhm.
you did not have the tools to process your loss.
Right.
So of course, as you went into adulthood, that's going to come back. And if no one's taught you those tools in that time, you're kind of left to fend for yourself.
Like I went to therapy on and off like my whole life, like since I was like 9 or something. And that definitely helps. Although I think the quality of therapy also
Oh, yeah.
matters, which is something I'm learning now. Just finding finding the right therapist, finding high quality therapy. Sometimes I even worry about that with medications, where you get the you get the
Yeah.
generics, and I like because like with my brother's like a nutritionist, so like he looks up the sourcing on everything, like any supplements or any food, even
Yeah.
just food, and like yeah, so like the sourcing on the generics, I don't know, like
And not everyone
I don't know
probably
what kind
can
of
do that,
quality.
like
No,
either,
I can't understand science.
it's just like it's this huge.
Yeah, I mean, my brother got a degree in it to
I
be
have a
able to.
question though, because you kind of touched on something
Yeah,
about finding the
for
right
sure.
therapist, finding the right help. Do you think that maybe had you had those resources, it could have prevented your breakdown and leading to where you ended up?
Um, it's an interesting question. It's hard to, it's hard to say. I was also very stubborn,
Same.
in that, like, I mean, one of the things that happened too is my stepdad was very, I mean, abusive, but he was very, like, he forced me to get a job when I was 17, and I didn't want to, and then I rebelled against that for years later when it was like, I mean, he died kind of recently too. Him forcing me to get a job and me like, I don't know, just rebelling against that. And also, yeah, he was very like verbally abusive and kind of manipulative, and that wasn't good either. So all that stuff, yeah, it's hard to say what would have happened with better resources.
Well, I'm curious about when you got into comedy. Do you think did you always have like a comedic lens, or just because, if you're already, deciding, like you said, you're in fight or flight mode, kind of survive, or rather you said, survival instincts. And then to even think about things like love, entertainment, like jokes is kind of crazy to, I don't know, just picture when that came into your life.
It is, I mean, I started doing stand up when I was 19, and before that, I did improv in high school and theater, and went to like I basically people were like, you got to go to college now, and I was like, I don't want to do that. But then I was like, okay, well, this improv team came to our school when I was in high school, so I'll go there, I guess, and do improv with those people because they seem pretty cool. So, and I did. That's what I just chose this school based on their improv team, and I went there and did improv there, and that's all I wanted to do. I never wanted to, like, people were like, where are you thinking about transferring? Because it's like a community college. And I was just like, this is it.
This
Like,
is the team.
and yeah, I always wanted to do, I just always wanted to do comedy and make movies. And like, to me, I don't know how, like, I would write like poetry and shit when I was younger. And, um, like I always just it was always about kind of like a need for self-expression, or like um a need for, like, I think comedy, um I think stand-up comedians specifically are people who have a problem with communicating, and I think that's kind of universal, like no one's
Hmm.
great at communicating, but I think comics like have this extra like problem with it, like they have an issue with it, like
I'm
That's
not
so
saying
weird.
anything right
That
now.
is such. I've never heard this theory before, but I'm very intrigued.
yeah, I mean, because I was like, what is it about movies? Like, what is it about art? Like, what is it trying to do? And like to me, I thought it was like this higher communication, like, so it's like things you can't say in a conversation or with words or whatever. Um, and yeah, so it's like this elevated communication. So that's what movies are trying to do, is communicate something. and stand up obviously is like communication. It's literally people talking, right? Like, and it's a very specified, like, I talk, I have a microphone,
You have to
uh
listen.
everyone else shut up and listen to me. um but it is, I think art is very, optimistic.
Yeah.
Like it's like a very positive thing, and like even if the art itself is negative, I think it's like an optimistic thing. Like if you're saying, look at this, how life is so ugly and awful, the effort that you put forth to show people that is
Yeah.
optimistic. Like the act is optimistic.
Yeah, it's like externalizing something that if it didn't matter, you could just keep it inside, but you have to put it out in the world in some way, in whatever medium the art ends up being.
Like the idea of like form and content and like what something is, whether something's like a movie or stand up or poetry or painting or music, like it's not, I don't see, I don't like differentiate really. Like if I'm paintings, then it's like it's the same thing that makes
Hmm.
me paint, that makes me do stand up, that makes me write, that makes me like listening to music. I'm not a musician at all, but like
Experiencing music.
it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's something in my brain that I think music. I don't know anyone who listens to music as
Mm.
much as I do. There's a quote from Hunter S. Thompson where he says, "To me, music has always been a matter of fuel," you know. And he said, like, more sentimental people will call it inspiration, but what they mean is
I was
fuel.
I was
And
gonna
he's
say
like,
inspiration when you were
yeah,
like trying to think of the word, and that's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that fuel, like, and for me, I think I have a very hard time like getting out of bed sometimes, or like, this is like chronic depression or whatever it is, that makes motivation very difficult. And so, like, sometimes I have to turn on music just to get out of bed.
What I wanted to kind of know too, like it seems like comedy was such a fuel for you as well, like something that's made helped you get through things. What was it, and like what were the steps that you took to kind of overcome homelessness and housing instability?
How'd you make them
Well,
millions?
um, when I was homeless, I started doing comedy a lot, like, and I started talking about things that I was afraid to talk about on stage. In that, it just pushed me in a way that was like, it's like all of a sudden I don't care if this bombs or kills, because either way I'm going back to my awful life. Like it doesn't matter, like you got, it almost became like this thing of like, you guys
Yep.
can't hurt me anymore. I'm fucking,
You're not a
I'm already hurting. I don't know, like you can't get worse.
But it is a kind of unique power in life when you're so powerless or defeated, in a sense of like the outcome of other people. You're not affected by the outcome of your joke or how you come off to other people. And that is it's a unique place to be in life. But yeah, how
And I would say affected
sure,
less.
sure, yeah.
Because that doesn't never goes away no matter. And yeah, and sometimes I would feel ridiculous, like I'd be living, because I lived in a shack behind a factory for like over 7 years, almost 8 years. And I would be in the shack like freezing, and but like I'm thinking about like how my set went, or like what went wrong, and I'm literally like, I need some blankets. What am I doing? So it is, but I don't know. Maybe if I was, if I was in a comfortable house, then I would be thinking about it more
Or less, even, like maybe
than
had
if.
you like not like you had that as fuel, like you like I don't know, I feel like for me I'm always really inspired when I'm depressed, like when you were talking about poetry earlier. I can write poetry for days when I am sad. When I am happy, like I'm like, I don't need to write poetry, life is good, like whatever. I think sometimes
Right,
like
right.
those rough times help you hold on to that creativity and to those things that you are passionate about.
Well, I will say something that I do feel like it helped me break through to another level where I was very frustrated, like artistically and creatively, like I was sick of doing 3 minute, 5 minute, 7 minute, 10 minute sets, and I really wanted to do more. I really felt like I have more to offer, and like that I had more to say than that. And so I started creating opportunities for myself to do that, like Fringe being a big one. Um, and that's kind of the cool thing about Fringe is it's all just you doing it. Like you're
Yeah.
self-producing in a lot of cases. You're writing, you're acting, you're doing the whole thing, like which is overwhelming. But also it's I have creative freedom that I wouldn't otherwise have maybe.
When was your first Fringe?
Last year.
Okay, so it's this
Yeah.
show that you're doing now.
Yeah, and I don't think I would have been able to do it you know, had I been living in a shack behind a factory. I don't think because there's
Yeah.
times when I definitely, like living in that unstable circumstances definitely hurt my, I think, comedy career in a lot of ways. Like whereas um headlining roast battle or whatever, and like I was losing my fucking mind, and some crazy shit went down, and that was like I think 2016 too, so it was a crazy time.
Whoa, yeah.
um but uh I don't know, it's hard to say like that things would have been different if things were different, because I don't know how much, obviously it would have been different if things were different, but I don't know how much different it would be, or like part of me, I had some growing up to do in some areas, and like I had to learn to take care of myself, and it's almost like taking everything else away and just completely isolating myself. Um, it uh, I hesitate to say helped, but maybe forced me to like kind of, I mean, things with mental health and things with I don't know, relationship stuff and all kinds of stuff like that. Self work on yourself.
It's hard to do. I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like it's never done, and I don't know. I
right.
think it's really easy to say like, "Oh, I had growing up to do," or somebody else had growing up to do. I think we all have journeys, right? Like we all have
Yeah,
our ups and downs. Like I have had privilege in my life at different times, and I have also had I have had housing instability as well, right? And I think it's so easy to come from the privileged side and look at other people on the other side and one way, right? Now that I have, for me, I have focused on my career, and that was the number one thing for me growing up, because I knew that then I could give myself stability, and that's all I wanted, and I craved it, right? But at the same time, that response was, I sacrificed relationships. I've sacrificed a lot of other things in my life. Was that the right choice? I don't know. But I could also say I had some growing up to do. So I think it's,
yeah,
I don't know. We all have growing up to do. We all have lessons to be learned, but I think
yeah.
we need to support people more. And it just it sounds like you're such a creative, talented individual, and the fact that you had to spend so much time figuring it out by yourself in such dire circumstances is just, it seems so wrong.
I mean, I do. One of the words that keeps coming up for me is unnecessary, like
Hmm.
unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
That's what homelessness is really and I sometimes I even wonder, for the way our society is set up, it kind of is necessary for how our society works. And that's why I think a lot of people are like, hey, maybe there's a different way we can do this where all this unnecessary suffering doesn't happen, where it's not, our system is not based on racism and, having a lower class of person. Like having like it's not supposed to be a class system, but it totally is.
Well, we don't care
Um,
Mm.
about each other. Like, we've lost the family unit. Like, I think back in different times, like, we would have been taking care of our siblings, parents, children, whatever it may be. And
Yeah.
we've kind of lost that. And as we've lost that, I think it gets easier to have higher numbers of people. And then it's just not my problem, right? I think that's how everyone looks at it.
well,
Not
yeah,
my
it's
problem.
also like I will tell you this, and maybe this is something to be shared for sure. Is I think most people, 9 times out of 10, people choose to be kind when they're faced with a tragic circumstance or like I don't know when I mean like the number of like people who bought me food or given me a ride or like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like I mean I can't even remember every one of them, but I remember the feeling of hope and um like what that it's just that would get me someone would be like I give you a ride home and I'll be like that just made I and that's one less bus trip or whatever, one less late night on the train or whatever it is, and just I that's kind of shit like meant a lot to me. Like just the smallest act of kindness from people that like and some people don't even think of it as the kindness. They just think, "Oh, it's not a big deal" or whatever. But it does it and well, like something I tell people to do, I think a real easy thing to do, and some people are scared to do it sometimes, but like, is to just, if you have a few minutes, talk to a homeless person, like talk to them, like just,
Mm.
They're
ask them, like,
humans.
what's your life like? Or like, how are you doing? How are things? And I mean, some people will tell you the most incredible fucking stories you've ever heard in your life. And it gives you, because I think everyone is just, they're just trying to figure it out the same way everyone else is. It's
Yeah, just a lot more odds stacked against you because it just seems like once you're against the system or like sort of out of the loop of society protection and like Jackie you brought up like familial, we're a nuclear family model and resources being it's also it's like when you brought it up earlier of like things began to be harder to apply for, it didn't seem like it was like, oh, they're harder to apply for, but they're better. It's like they're just harder to apply for and like harder to
no, yeah, they're
get
not.
and like it's not improving the system. It's like making the greedy wealth holders able to like keep hold of their wealth. And yeah, and just the idea of bringing up any surplus is an injustice, that kind of idea that if you want to have ultra wealthy, it's at the expense of people who are going to be just really pushed to the side. And I know your show, speaking of, your show talks a lot about your experiences and you get to make a lot of those jokes from your perspective. I'm curious if you have thoughts on when you see comedians, especially in the LA scene, that do their bit about homeless people and like how you take those jokes.
Yeah, I there's a part in my new show, just like I where I talk about how I used to do jokes about homelessness because I would see so many people have like such a fucking terrible take on it, where
Yeah.
it's like it's just more like a complaint about homelessness, and it's weird. It's like complaining about litter, but it's like you're complaining about human beings who are the litter, like it was always strange to me, and I always felt more, I guess, like I always felt more connected to those people than to the people saying like, I don't know, like they smell or they're an inconvenience to me or I shouldn't have to think about that while I'm on my way to work or whatever it is, whatever. Because I think a big thing, a very human thing is like, again, I think like 9 times out of 10 people are kind, but it is I think in our society we've kind of dehumanized homelessness. Like it's very, we like to other them. Um, which is kind of a survival technique. So it's like it's hard to even like because if you see yourself in somebody, like if you saw yourself in a homeless person, you have to reckon with the idea that that could be you being homeless. So to like have empathy for somebody, you have to kind of put yourself in their position. And people don't want to believe that that could be them, like that they could, but it very easily can. Like we're all like, um, some tragedy away from that happening.
I mean, it's
Like
so true. I got very sick in my 20s, and I think back to that all the time. Had I not had my mom, like, and I had the opportunity to go live with my mom, and she took care of me for a long time, but had that not been had been an option for me, I have no idea what would have happened to me. I can't even
yeah,
guess.
even if you like your mom was like no, like
Oh yeah,
because I mean like
I can imagine that.
I have family. I mean, for me, my mom begged me to like come home when I was going through this, but my stepdad was there, so I wasn't. There was just not a. It was safer on the streets than in the house. You know.
Yeah, and also that putting
There,
that distance between, yourself and someone in different circumstances is such a mind fuck, because it's like not like homeless people are in somehow another species. It's like that's just a person
yeah.
that's not inside of the loop of society. It's not, it's not even about like maybe you will live your whole life being, socioeconomically wealthy, whatever. That's not a term, but like having money. Maybe you'll die rich, but you still are a person, a human that has those basic needs, and you just got the luxury of ignoring them, of like having them sort of like muted. And it's not, yeah.
No, for sure. That's like, and yeah, as you start thinking of things like privilege and yeah, I think, and also like, I think when you have nothing like that, and this now I'm like saying a line from my play essentially or my show, but it's like if you have nothing, you really start to realize what's important and what's valuable and what and like to me, I learned the value. I think I learned the value in others' perspectives and other like talking to people. And to me, I don't know. To me, it's fascinating to hear. Like I remember conspiracy theories used to be fun, and that's like one of the worst things about today's time that I hate is like if they took the fun out of
Yep,
it
they really
because
did. Thank you,
you
QAnon.
start talking to someone and they'd say something crazy like the moon they faked the moon landing and you're like oh really tell me all about that and then they tell you all this crazy shit and some of it sound like oh maybe you're onto something and some of it sounded fucking insane but it was still it's still fun to talk to a person and hear that kind of stuff. And now we're at a point where that shit has become too real, where those like conspiracy theories have become too dangerous and threatening to now where it's like, and yeah, and that's like a big problem because it does divide people and does make people not want to talk to each other. And I mean, that's where we're at as a society right now. People just don't want to hear other points of views that are dangerous to their like people say the bubble thing which I don't really I think the more than a bubble people have their own narrative like and when their narrative is threatened that is very I don't know they're like trained it's perceived as a threat when it's not really a threat it's just alternate information that may or may not be you know whether it's true or false or whatever that's for you to figure out or what it but like it's just information like people are afraid of information now
Yeah.
and I don't blame them
Yeah, it does feel
but
like
I don't know where
we're
we
getting to be set up in society to have a side of the algorithm that we fall on, and it becomes that echo chamber of just you're purely getting your narrative reinforced to you, and so when it's
yeah
something outside of your narrative comes along, it is, easy to categorize it as other, and like that is
there's
wrong.
also there's also a binary that is so false you're either Republican or liberal. And it's like when you talk to these two far extremes, as in the media, the liberal bias and the the crazy right wing, and when you start to talk to two people who voted one way or another, because there's those two ways to vote basically, uh, you start to find out they have a lot in common, and a lot of their fears are the same. A lot of their concerns for the world are similar. It's really often just like one subject where they don't agree, and then so it's like 99% of the world they agree on, and then there's just this 1% that's like it's the 1%.
It
That's what it
always
is.
is.
Yeah.
Wait, can you vote when you're unhoused?
I mean, yeah.
Huh.
I used my mom's address. I guess you need an address. So,
It's a finicky
um,
address.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I think there is a way. I think in California,
Hmm.
especially, they make it so that they can. I'm
Interesting.
not 100%
And now we're
sure
getting
because I did
prisoners.
use. See, I was privileged. I was voting.
Yeah, you had that address privilege. God, what a storied life you have led. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your show that's coming up, Homeless Romantic?
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't know that was the name.
I did. I wanted to share. Oh yeah, I want to share a Eugene V. Debs quote, and I think it'll bridge into my talking about my show. But it's about the thing about Eugene V. Debs was like a socialist, um, and he was a political figure, and Bernie Sanders talked about
Hmm.
him and stuff. But he has this quote that I always think about. He was in court, and he had the time to make a statement. Um, and he said, "Your Honor, years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living beings, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, while there is a lower class, I am in it, and while there is a criminal element, I am of it, and while there is a single soul in prison, I am not free."
That's beautiful.
And yeah, so so I really felt that like going into this homelessness path, um, like I felt like that, like why am I any better than these people? Which I think everyone's better than that.
Hmm.
It's like this societal glitch where people are tricked into thinking
Yeah.
that's acceptable in some way.
Yeah.
And it's really not.
No, I think you really hit on it, and I think that's like a lot to like think about, right? Like and digest later on. Like, what is it that makes us all like as a society be able to walk past someone and think that, right? Because, like you said that not long ago, we're all one tragedy away from it. You have no idea what could happen tomorrow that could put you there, and when we treat people like they are less than us, I think in the heart of what you were just saying in that quote, we're treating ourselves like we're less than that, right? Like if we're all one humanity, then everything we do to everyone else, we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah, and I do think there's some kind of, not to get too wacky with it, but there is some sort of universal oneness that we all are like. It affects, and with the kindness, like an act of kindness. I think that like those are the kind of reverberations I want to
Hmm.
send out into the world. And yeah, like my show is very dark, but it's also funny, and I think
Confirmed. I've seen it.
okay, yeah, yeah. And you saw, and it's a different show now than what it
Ooh.
was. Um, it's less funny. It's less funny now. Um, no, I mean there's some heavier
Yeah. Okay.
parts that weren't there before that are not meant to be funny. Um, and part of that was my director. Um, but I think she has a point about having those moments where it's like, because I think if I didn't have comedy when I was homeless, I would have been completely lost. Um, like it was important. Like it's very important to have that kind of release and relief, and also just a outlet. Um, yeah, like I and it made me realize how yeah, how important it is. Like, and like when I was a kid, the comedy was that important to me. And then I started doing it, and I became creatively frustrated, and it became like this other thing where it wasn't fun anymore, or as fun as it used to be. Like, and so I was creatively frustrated, but when I was homeless, it's like, all right, well, that's not fun. And comedy is the most fun thing. And like, you know, I had the wrong approach, I had the wrong mindset about it, which is like comedy's always fun. That's but in its essence, laughing is never not fun. Like it's never like a drag to laugh.
No, I love
Um,
it. So,
so you need that. Everyone needs it, and yeah, it saved my life for in very real ways.
love that. Well, if folks want to check out your show, where do they find it?
Yeah, Hollywood Fringe site. You can find me on Instagram, Tony Barfaloney.
What a name! What a name!
If you type in homeless romantic, it should come up. Actually, homeless romantic.
Hashtags.
I think that's probably
No, it
backwards.
looks
no,
good.
it looks good. Yeah.
I noticed it once you
No?
said the name.
Okay,
I was like,
cool.
he's literally wearing the hat, and I didn't
Gotta
get
rep
it.
that merch, baby.
Branding. But yeah. The Hollywood Fringe site. You could buy tickets. You could search homeless romantic on there. Yeah, search homeless romantic on Instagram. DM me. I don't know. There's discount codes and
Nice.
stuff if you need a discount code. Yeah, don't let anything stand in your way of coming to see it. I will give you a ticket if you really are hard up for
I
it.
love that.
And
Well,
you
next
wanna
year you
see
can
it.
do a virtual cast too, and then sell those virtual tickies too.
Yeah.
It's Jackie in the Bay Area probably won't go, but you know what? Guess who will be there? This guy, Buck.
That's right
Hell yeah.
there. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Like, this was honestly fascinating. I mean, I feel like I just learned so much about like what to think about when we're talking about this subject.
I do, just real quick, I want to say, like, I have my own experience with it, and other people might have other experiences. I could only really um, speak for what I went through. But yeah, I just want to keep acknowledging that, like, a lot of people had it even worse than me, and like those are people that are still struggling. And I mean, not that I'm not struggling, but like there's people who have been homeless for 10, 15, 20 years or longer, and there's just still, it's a day-to-day constant thing. Like it's so yeah, just I consider myself lucky, and I'm grateful.
Well, I consider myself lucky to know you, and I am going to take to heart that meaningfulness of being the act of kindness for someone else. And really, those are the only regrets that keep me up at night, is thinking about times I've been shitty to someone else. It's like, why do I do that? Why can't I just?
I mean, and hey, like, don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm like in a hurry and a homeless person is like, "Hey, can I have some money?" I'm just like, no. Like I don't fucking spend my days like passing out flowers and hamburgers to people or whatever. Everyone gets frustrated, and everyone,
we're all human,
gets I would say a small act of kindness even to yourself.
Okay, any final words, anyone on this?
No, this is great. Thank you for sharing your expert story, and we can't wait to check you out at the Fringe and beyond.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
We'll see you on the flip side.
That was great. And that was the show. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope you stay curious.
If you enjoyed this video, watch our other videos here on YouTube, or you should listen to the episode on We're Experts Now podcast. Bex, where can they find us?
You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart Music.
And what if they want to talk to us?
If you have ideas for something you want us to investigate, send us an email at we'reexpertspod@gmail.com. That's wereexpertspod@gmail.com.
Great job on that spelling.
Ooh.
A+. Do you do this professionally?
I believe we're both doing it professionally right now.
Wow. People should know about this.
I completely agree. And you can find us on Instagram at We're Experts Now Pod.
Thanks again. And if you enjoy the show, subscribe and comment, and do not forget to leave a 5-star tip.
That's a great idea. Are you a podcast expert?
I think we both are. I think
we're experts now.
This has been a Just Being Better Media production.